Hello everyone, it is Justice, and today we are going to be inking up every single pen that I currently own. Um, this video has been a long time in the making because it is a little bit more in terms of editing than I typically do, so bear with me and please feel free to give any feedback or criticism that you have because I am wanting to grow. So, this is every single pen that I own laid out, along with all of the inks that I have right now. Um, if you've been around for a while, I have slowly worked my way through some inks, and so this is what's remaining. And as for my pens, you're gonna see some new friends, and that is these guys. So, I got two Pilot Grants pens with medium nib. Those are the slim ones in purple and pink marbling. And I also got a Sailor pink glitter translucent pen. I forgot its name, but it has a medium fine nib. These I all got from Pensachi. That is an online retailer. I found them through Instagram, and they're honestly very nice. They have a lot of limited items that are hard for me to find otherwise. So I've honestly been creeping their stock for a while now, and I could not help myself. We are going to be inking with Iroshizuku Sutsuji in this gorgeous sparkly Pilot Baby because honestly it just screams I have to put pink in it at least for the very first ink. I'm not a huge fan of writing with pink because I find that it's very harsh on my eyes, but I feel like if you look at this pen and you choose anything other than a very bright pink, you're kind of doing it a disservice. So we're starting out with that. The actual filling mechanism is a cartridge converter. That is this little thing on the back of the pen that you see me fiddling with right now. It has a piston, which means if you turn it one way, it pushes the air out, and if you push it another way, or rather turn it another way, it sucks in. So the way that that works is you put your nib into your ink, and there is a breather hole in that black bit beneath the nib. That is going to be your ink channel. So if it is submerged in ink and you rotate that piston in order to suck up the ink, it will then suck up the ink. One thing about converters is that often in this way they will not fill completely, and so sometimes you may have to use what is it called? An ink syringe. And you'll see me use that later on. But this is a decent enough fill. I'm not looking to do anything too wild, particularly because I mentioned earlier pink is not my favorite. So I kind of just want to use it until it runs out and then explore my other options with this gorgeous, gorgeous baby pen. I can't tell you how much I love that pen. I'm so happy for it. There was a Sailor in the past that came and went that I could not get that was a little bit of a lighter pink. It was still very pink, like not pastel, but it was a little bit lighter, not quite so hot, and the entire body of the pen, plus the cap, was translucent confetti pink with sparkles. That pen is one of my, oh, I missed out, I will never have you, I will always dream of you type pens. That pen and the Pelikan M600 in pink. What I would do to have those in my collection. I am now showing you the Pilot Grants. This is the pink marble one. It's kind of like a dusty, almost terracotta style pink. It's definitely not a cool toned by any means. And this one also has a cartridge converter. So I'm kind of going through the inks. I'm not quite sure what I want to use yet. So I already know with the purple one, I want to use Iroshizuku Murasaki Shikibu. And so I'm putting it beside it because I don't want that to be in my running of what could be a possibility. Now I'm testing out Yamabudo, and that bottle is one of my very original bottles. I am almost at the end of it, but not quite yet. That was purchased along with my bottle of Konpeki, and Konpeki has been gone. I finished Konpeki probably a month or so ago, and oh my gosh, I miss it. You see, I'm taking the actual converter off in this case, because my Yamabudo bottle is so low, I can't actually submerge my little breather hole to pull up the ink. So this is a case in which an ink syringe is absolutely necessary. Now, before I go there, I am pulling out a sample of Sailor Manyo Haha that I got from my friend Anna. Thank you, Anna, so much for this bottle. I decided, you know what, we're just not going to even try to look for my syringe. I don't feel like stopping this video and trying to hunt for it, so we're going to go with Haha, and it kind of matches the color of the pen. So we'll just do that. We'll just do that. It'll be fine. We don't need a syringe. And you'll also notice that every single time I fill a pen, the grip section gets quite dirty. That's just gonna happen. It's gonna be a little bit dirty. You're gonna get inky fingers. Get yourself a nice little towel to wipe it off on. The one that I'm using here is a no, not a microfiber cloth. It's like a glasses cleaning cloth, so it's very, very soft. It's not likely to scratch things, which is why I chose the glasses cleaning cloth, because whenever I got some of my first pens, I was really nervous about potentially damaging them or using like a cotton washcloth and getting fuzzies all in the nib. So I decided to use the glasses cleaning cloth, and no matter how many washes it has been through, those little ink splotches are staying. You'll see here that I went ahead and I found my ink syringe because it's just going to be impossible otherwise. Now we are filling the Purple Pilot Grants with this new ink. To me, it's definitely not new by Pilot at all. It's been around for quite a while, but honestly I've been very resistant to use purple inks because if you see up above, I have Diamine Iris from their Flowers collection. I learned that I hated that collection. Something about all of those inks was a bit dry compared to the ones that I'm used to. So whenever I put them in a pen, they don't flow quite as generously, and I did not like that at all. And so that purple ink kind of goes the same way. The only combination of pen ink and paper that I have found that I tolerate with the Diamine Iris ink is putting it into my extra fine TWSBI and then writing on moleskin paper of all things. I can't tell you why that combination works, but nothing else does, but it does. And it's honestly a very magical combination of the Diamine Iris, an extra fine TWSBI, and moleskin paper, but it is literally the only way that I can make that ink feel good. So I don't really use it an awful lot, and I think that kind of scorned me on purple inks for the longest time. So I decided to buy a purple ink in a brand that I know that I really enjoy and kind of see how that goes. This is my Platinum 3776. I already had blue ink in it, so I'm just going on and continuing to add blue ink to it because I don't really feel like having anything different in. As bad as that sounds. And you've also noticed that up until this point, I've tried to match the ink to the pen. For this one specifically, the nib writes in such a way that I really do not like it with certain colors. I find that it really has to be with a darker, more, not neutral, but a classic ink color that's not really going to strain my eyes because it does write a little bit thin and it's not the most wet writer. Okay, I surprised myself. I definitely thought that I added blue in, but no, we're going black. This is the Monteverde Black. I find that it's a very lubricated black. Everyone has different, what's the word? Preferences and different understandings of what they believe to be lubricated. Honestly, do not think that it's advertised as being lubricated at all, but man, does it flow. It's a document ink, and so it's an ink that's not really going to move a lot of places if it were accidentally to get spilled on, which is a very, very great thing if you are a fountain pen hobbyist that is also quite clumsy. So, document ink it is. This little baby is a Nagasawa Pro Gear Slim Mini. The nib is medium fine, and it does also have a cartridge converter. I'm trying out this iris ink in this pen. I love this pen so dearly. I want to try and like it with this ink and we're just gonna give it a shot. Um, Hindsight is in because I'm recording this after I've been writing with it for a while. I do not like this combination. The Nagasawa Pro Gear Slim Mini, the nib is a little bit scratchy, a little bit feedbacky, and that's not anything negative about the pen because a lot of people really love having feedback in their pens. For me, I am more of a buttery smooth, like hot butter on a skillet pan type writer. I really am not fond of the pencil combination, like pencil and paper, how you can hear. Oh, sorry. So, that ink and that pen, awful match. So, maybe don't match it with a medium fine that doesn't write super duper wet if you're not a huge fan of how that writes. And this is my Pilot Cavalier, the nib is fine. And we are filling it with Fuyugaki from Iro Shizuku. It is an orange ink. I purchased this ink in 2018 and I'm finally making my way through it. This pen I also purchased in 2018. I actually bought it in Tianjin. It is one of my little souvenirs from whenever I studied abroad in China. For those of you that are fairly new here, because I have noticed a lot of new people in, hi, welcome. I actually have my degree in Mandarin Chinese. I studied abroad for a little bit, and I try to not hoard things in my house. And you would not believe that from the amount of stationery that I have, but stationery takes up little room. But I am largely anti souvenirs unless they're very little, and so that Pilot Cavalier was it. And honestly, the Pilot Cavalier next to the two Grants pens makes my heart so happy because they're all marbled. And I just having them all next to each other, even though they were purchased years apart and they're all marbled, all in the pinky purple, it's just so happy. This is a Ferris wheel press brush pen, brush ink, brush pen. Um, it was a gift to me from one of my good friends, and the nib is going to be in fine. It is a very pale pinky purpley color, like it's a very cool toned pink, and I like that combined with the brass hardware and detailing. For the longest time, I'll be honest, I did not use this pen because it wrote quite dry, but I did some very basic nib tuning where I adjusted the tines, and it flows so much better now. I was afraid to mess with it because it was a gift pen, and I was just like, oh my gosh, if I ruin this gift pen, it is never going to be the same, and I'm going to feel awful, awful, awful. But let me tell you, I've had it for a little bit now, and adjusting the tines have made all of the difference. I largely disliked it until then because I wanted to love it so bad, but the way that it wrote was not my favorite. We're getting there now. With this next pen, this is a Pilot Vanishing Point or Pilot Capless, depending on where in the world you are. The nib is fine, and we are filling it with Irishizuku Kujaku. Kujaku is also a new ink to me because okay, you might have just heard my dog like flip his ears around. I remember back in the day when I was obsessed with watching Boho Berry. She was a bullet journalist and I was like genuinely obsessed with her. I was in her monthly subscription box. I did it all. But she really liked Kujaku and she was like the teal queen. And I'm not a big fan of teal, and I have this internal resistance against enjoying something that is someone else's quote unquote thing, you know? Like, I don't want to feel like I'm a copycat, and I feel like that has gone deep down into my subconscious. And so after finishing Konpeki, I was like, I want to try some other Iroshizuku blues to see if Konpeki really is my favorite blue or if I'm missing out. So, we're doing it. This is also a Pilot Capless. It is in black, the nib is in medium, and we are filling it with Yamabudo. This one, syringe again. I use syringe on both of these because the Pilot Vanishing Point slash Capless nib units are a little bit wonky for me. I really do not like the sensation of having to fill them within a bottle because they're so thin and so weird. I almost exclusively fill them with a syringe. Also, I'm not sure if this is actually true or if this is just how I feel, but I really feel like the converters on the pilot capless do not hold a lot of ink. I find myself running through ink on those the quickest, and whether that's because they are the most convenient for me to reach for or I actually use them quite a lot, I'm not sure, but I almost exclusively fill them with a syringe. We are getting towards the end of my pens, and I'm trying to match pen to ink because I really want to use every single ink that I have. If I double up because I've run out of inks, then that's fine, but I want to kind of set them apart and see what ink I want in what pen in order to reduce the regret as much as I can. And so I have put my Pilot Custom 823 next to Irishizuku Asagao. I have put Organic Studio Nitrogen next to my Twisby Mini. I think that that's Thunderstorms, Robert Oster Thunderstorms by my Twisby Eco. Emerald of Chavor by my Kaweco Sport. Pilot Namiki Black next to my Traveler's Pen. I have Sayoro next to my Twisby Diamond 580. I have, I think it's called Shinryoku, this green ink that is currently open, with my Pilot E95S / Pilot Elite, depending on what part of the world you're in. Noodler's Lexington Gray with my red Pilot capless, and we're going with an Iroshizuku brown ink for my Pilot Decimo Extra Fine. I can never remember the name of that brown ink. It is not my favorite. I have contemplated sending it to a friend multiple times because I just do not like brown ink. I have definitely tried to live the fantasy of being one of those journalers where everything's a little bit sepia and brown and you very much have a vintage feel to your books and it's very classy. I just feel like my page is old when I write with brown. Um, Also, I watch the Goulet Pencast literally every single week, and prior to that, I listened to the Goulet Q&A for many, many years. It has been something to where every single week I expect to spend a few hours listening to Brian Goulet and Drew Brown, or a combination of both, or one or another. And Drew Brown is obsessed with brown ink, hence his last name. I just can't find a love for it. I am very much a blue ink person, sometimes a gray ink person. That's kind of my comfort zone. I also do find that I'm fine with a green as long as it's a very rich green and not too like bogey colored or too naturey colored. Like I'm here for a very cool toned green. Oh, so this one here, this Pilot Custom 823, this is the first of the Vacfill? Is that what it's called? Vacfill pens, where in the back there's like a piston built in, and so you pull it back, and then as you depress the back of the pen into the ink, it sucks it up. And that pen holds so much ink. I'm going to be using that for a while, which is why I went with Asagao, because I already know that I really like that ink, and I know that I like that ink and pen combination. So it's something that's not going to frustrate me to use. And I'm also filling my Twisby Diamond 580 extra fine now with Sayoro. This pen I use often for work notes, like as I'm just going to meetings, I'll just use this pen because it can fill so much that I don't really have to worry about it running out of ink randomly in the middle of the week. And Sayoro is... Ooh, what is the word? Wait, is this even Sayoro? Can I see? Nope, I sure cannot. I believe it's Sayoro. It's an ink to where it's kind of green, kind of blue, but it's dark enough to where it doesn't really matter and it's still work appropriate. But depending on the paper that you write on, every so often it may sheen a little bit red, which I really like because writing with that pen, no one's going to be offended by the ink color that I use, but every so often in my own personal notes, I will feel quite happy being able to see the sheen as kind of like a little hidden Easter egg for myself. Now, we are putting Noodler's Lexington Gray into this cartridge. So, something that honestly has been a life changer is for pens that are cartridge converters, if you do not feel like buying a converter or you hate the converter that it came with, just keep really refilling cartridges with whatever ink that you want. You can use your ink syringe to fill it with water and clean out the previous ink, and then use a syringe again to put in whatever ink that you feel like. So that's what I did with that red Pilot capless. And I'm doing a very similar thing with this little champagne colored Decimo. Something that I would also like to note, I really, really, really like gold or rose gold hardware on pens. This Decimo squeaked by because the entire body is what I consider to be rose gold, so I kind of let it pass with having the silver hardware. For a lot of people, this does not matter at all, but it still bothers me quite a lot whenever I put it next to the rest of my Pilot Vanishing Point slash caplesses, and the little hardware clip area does not match. It just like makes me so uncomfortable. And I see the special edition Decimos come out in Japan. They came out with one that was like gold hardware, and then the body was a darker pink with little sakura blossoms on it, and I lost everything inside of myself. I was like, I need this pen. But of course, whenever I actually found it for sale was at a time that I did not have money for it, and so I had to let it go, and it's gone forever. It doesn't hit me quite as hard as that sparkly confetti sailor and the Pelican M600 pink though. Like, I can live without that Decimo. I love it. If I had it, I would love it so much, but it's not going to like haunt me as the one that got away. The other two will. This Kaweco Sport I have just filled with Organic Studio Nitrogen. I had a sample of it from a random ink sample I purchased. One thing that I will say about Organic Studio Nitrogen is it is beautiful on the page, but by God, does it smudge. I probably got halfway through using the pen that I just filled up with it before I decided to just completely flush it, because I had written maybe 3 pages with it, and 2 out of the 3 pages got smudged just from the oil of my hands flipping back through my notebook after the fact. And I really do not have the patience to be dealing with smudged ink, especially days after it has been written. And something to understand about inks with very fun qualities, particularly sheening qualities like the Organic Studio line, they will never ever dry. Like, even if they look like they're dry on the page, if you come back months later and you have grubby little hands and you just accidentally smudge it, it's gonna smudge. So, with great sheen comes great responsibility, and I am not old enough for that responsibility. I can't control it, and I just have to accept that. This Emerald of Chivor bottle, I always have to check the very bottom because this one has some golden shimmer, and it tends to get stuck at the bottom of the bottle. So, I'm putting it in my TWSBI Mini because I really do like this ink, and I really like seeing it when it's being used. So, after I have shaken the bottle to get the glitter shimmer particles throughout the ink, I am filling it up, wiping it down, and we are good to go. For those of you that have not used Emerald of Chivor, I really would encourage you to at least try out a sample of it. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous ink. It's kind of like a very cool toned green. Like, arguably, it could be considered a teal. And it sheens red, and it has little flecks of not silver, oh my gosh, of like a golden yellowy glitter. But it's not very harsh. Like with the Organic Studio line, it is very, very apparent that it has sheen. This one, you just see it every so often if you use it on the right paper, and it just makes for such a fun writing experience. At this point, we have inked every single pen that I currently have in my collection, and we are lining them up so that you guys can see them all right beside one another. I also tried to sort them in families a little bit. So from the right, you'll see all of my Twisbees. You'll have my Decimo and my Vanishing Point, Kaweco, Travelers, and my E95S as pocket pens. Then we go into my custom 823, Ferris wheel press, Pilot Grants, Cavalier Pilot Grants, Platinum 3776, this new sailor pen, and ending it with another pocket pen, my Nagasawa Pro Gear Slim Mini. And here we cut to some writing samples. I actually lost footage for some of the top writing samples, so I very much do apologize for that. But you do still get to see what the samples look like. So, for example, you can see that my Pilot Vanishing Point medium nib and the Pilot Grants medium nib, they both write a little bit of a thicker line, a more wet line. But if you were to look at the Pilot Cavalier F or the Ferris wheel press F, you notice that those lines are very, very, very thin. And so you get a little bit of a feel. Because even compared to the Ferris wheel press F, even the Pilot Vanishing Point F with Noodler's Lexington Gray, it's a little bit of a darker line, a little bit of a slightly juicier line. But you have to really look at it. Pilot E95S, Pilot Elite, that is one of my favorite writers. I owned it previously in a fine nib, and I actually lost it doing a property tour for my job. So I felt very heartbroken and had to purchase another one. I decided that I would try out purchasing in a medium nib. Let me tell you, the medium nib was a mistake. If I were to purchase it again, it would be a fine nib all the way. The medium nib does not write poorly, but the fine nib has so much flexibility and give that it's a completely different writing experience. I loved it so much. It was absolutely not a flex nib, so don't go into it thinking that it's a flex nib, but it was flexible. So as you wrote, if you were to get into a writing pattern and every so often one stroke is slightly more aggressive, you could see that in the writing, which means it was a very expressive nib, at least for me. So I really miss it. It's never going to be replaced, and I'm never going to have the spot on the pen where my cat stole it and ran whenever he was a kitten and bit down, and I could see his little tooth mark. Those memories are lost. But it's fine. They're just pens. This is the thinnest writer that I own. It is my Pilot Vanishing Point Extra Fine Decimo. This is really good if you're writing in characters, like if the language that you're writing in has multiple strokes per character versus like a Roman-based language. I forget the correct word for it, but you know, like English, German, where you're like writing in like letters and then just going from side to side. It's so helpful if you're having to make lots of layers of strokes. You can also see, I never remember the name of that frickin' brown ink, so I had to question mark it and then actually go look at the bottle to double check because at this point I'd already put the bottles away to make room on my desk. The Pilot Custom 823, again, she is inked up with Asagao. This is one of my favorite Irisuzuku inks. Like, I believe that Konpeki is my favorite blue, but this one is almost like a cornflower color. It's powdery, it's very cool toned. It reminds... I actually don't know what it reminds me of. It reminds me of something very specific in this shade of blue. I just can't actually bring it to the forefront of my brain. But it's a very familiar, very warm, very delicate blue versus like the ink in a Pilot G2, which I view to be a little bit aggressive in my mind. But it's also light enough to where it's not going to strain your eyes if you're looking at a page that only has that ink, you know? Something I find, at least within myself, is I really like jewel-toned inks. They're going to show up on a page much easier for me to see. I think that there's a trend right now where a lot of people are liking very light in saturation inks, and they look gorgeous, but the only time that I can really tolerate looking at them is if they're only for a sentence or two on a page as an accent. And I don't really do a ton of collaging where my writing is just the accent. Honestly, most of my writing is the page, and there may be some stickers or something to just break it up. So writing in those light colors just doesn't work for me. But looking at like Job's journal, for example, because I am obsessed with YouTube journalers. He uses a lot of light saturation inks, and it looks gorgeous with the way that he does it because he also does quite a lot of collage. He'll also do some paintings, and so him switching up his inks and using them in that way works. Me, does not work. And so I can appreciate his spreads. I can appreciate how gorgeous and how aesthetically pleasing they are. It just doesn't work for me, and that is a-okay. Oh, you'll also see here that I got a second Aston leather case. This is in, I do not remember what the brown is called, but it's like a more camel colored brown. Whereas the previous one that I ordered, you can see slightly below it, is called the cognac. It is a very dark brown. I wanted another pen case because I had outgrown my cognac. And I really had my eye on some of the more bougie pen cases. But also at the same time, if I knew I was having to use two pen cases, it would bug me to no end if they did not match. And so I went ahead and got the matching pen case so I could at least just have them next to each other and not want to rip my hair out. So, here we are, one more pan of all of the pens. I'm so proud. How have you guys liked this? Please let me know. One, what's your fountain pen collection like? Two, do you have any trends that you like within your fountain pens? And three, what is your favorite nib size? I'm starting to try to get into mediums, but I think that fine really is my comfort point. I don't find that mediums are my everyday reliable writers. They're just whenever I feel like being extra saucy. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in with me. Thank you for watching this video. Comment if you would like to comment, like this video if you would like, and the subscribe button is always an option. I'd love to see you again. I don't release videos on any type of planned circuit